what is good, my Funky Fox friends? You already know who it is, the Funky Fox Magic Mustache Man, Clever Cushion, and this is Clever Wisdom. Let's get it! Yeah. It's so. Now today, y'all, I want to talk about something that's frankly kind of a pet peeve of mine, you know, in the spiritual community. And that's how people talk about the ego. You know, they've got that shit totally twisted, and they like to, you know, almost make derogatory comments about the ego. You know, oh, don't be so egotistical, and, you know, don't be so in your ego, and don't have such a big ego, whatever. Like, it's always got this negative connotation to it, which that's incorrect. I'm just gonna be straightforward and just, you know, throw the book at you right quick, but that's literally incorrect. And I'm gonna use two psychologists to back up that statement right there. Now, because when you see how this all breaks down, you will actually see that the ego is just a positive thing, actually. And it's really unfair that we keep throwing this negative energy toward ego, okay? So, the first psychologist is Carl Jung, and the second is Sigmund Freud. And they both have a three-part breakdown on how it works. Freud's is more centered around like the angel on this shoulder and the devil on this shoulder, and Jung's is more sequential, because he talks about the light body and then the shadow body and then the golden shadow body. So basically, that's got its own little way, and I can cover these very easily, very quickly as well. So we'll start with Freud, because I think that's the heart of really where I want to get to. Let's just start with that, and then I'll finish up with Jung. So basically, Freud saw things as, you know, the ego is the observer, you know. So it's just you when you are having thoughts, when you're just looking at a scenario, and you're not attaching yourself to anything, you're just watching, you see. And basically it breaks down like this. So the ego is, like I said, the observer, and then you have the id, or the ID, which is your lower self, which is all of the, you know, aspects that you don't really like to bring to the dinner table. It's all the skeletons in the closet, you feel. And then you have the super ego. And this is why I think it's funny that we tried to say that ego is such a horrible thing to say when it's not at all. It's actually the opposite, because the super ego is our higher self. You see, the thing that we always talk about, like, oh, spirit and higher self. Because it's kind of funny when we say spirit, spirit and ego are not separate. Because the ego state is the identityless state. It is literally you in the universe's perspective. It is you seeing the grand design, the big picture. So when you are egotistical, you are able to actually see the big picture of everything. When you're not egotistical, you're not able to see that. You're just not. And that's probably because you have too many attachments, because like I said, the ego is this state of identitylessness. You do not have any attachment to anything. Like, however you see yourself, whether your higher self or your lower self, they are not attached to anything. So it is just you seeing the grand design, what needs to happen, and just going with the flow. Like, you can just kind of see, oh, this needs to happen for this to happen, okay, and just moving forward. You see what I'm saying? Now, when you start focusing on your ID or your id, which I think this is a very interesting thing that it's called the id or the ID, because we have these in our wallets. We have IDs in our wallets or our purses or whatever have you. And it's the given name that you were given by your parents, and it's usually attached to your social security number and all this information of who they want to tell you that you are. Like, oh, this is where you live, this is, you know, what you do, this is all, you know, it's all of the surface 3D stuff that's for another video though, the 3D, 45D, that's a totally different video. But it's basically just the stuff that you have to deal with in this world, but it's who they try to tell you that you are but it's not who you are. It's just not truly, at least. And I guess I am going to actually have to touch a little bit on the 4D, 3D, and 5D in this as well. So basically, like that ID is your 3D self. It is the lower aspect of you. It is the lower plane, which if you break down the dimensions, 3D is lower than the 4D and the 5D. Now, to kind of backtrack a little bit, the ego, the observer state, that is the 4D. That is the mind. That is what that is. That's why when you're thinking and you're seeing things and you're not attaching yourself to any problems or whatever have you, you're not, there's really nothing inhibiting you. That is why you can move forward and the solutions come lightning fast, because you are in this state to just receive it, because you're not attached to anything. Nothing is literally holding you back. You're not like, you're just like, whoo, full speed ahead, you feel? So the 4D is the mental state, or the observer state. It's basically like the universe, like on its own, that's what that is, even though the universe possesses far more dimensions to it. It's a multiverse, essentially, that we experience quite a few things, on this plane here on Earth. Now, you have to do shadow work with your 3D self. All the trauma, all the darkness, all the hardships, all of that. You have to do shadow work for you to, basically ascend. But all of these things are it's all attached with stuff in the past, which I will touch more on that when I get to young. Now, moving on a little bit more, the superego, as I said, is your higher self. That is the 5D version of you. That is who you truly actually are. It's kind of interesting, because as I was saying to you, like, you are given a name. Well, your soul already has a name, and you on a soul level is the 5D, okay? And so if you can get to a place where you can be still and quiet, there's even a Bible verse that says, be still and know, you will know your true name, which is where Klever came from. I've got my given name of Caleb, and then I was very, still and quiet for quite some time, and this name kept jumping out. I'm like, why does this name keep jumping out, And then I kind of realized it over time, like, oh wait. And then I did a little bit of numerology research on it, and actually found that on even a numerology level, it is the same as my given name. So it's like, there is something about this that is just valid on so many levels. So it's pretty interesting. Now, that's what happens. You get to truly know yourself when you actually start to connect with your super ego, when you start to choose up, when you start to do the shadow work, then all of a sudden those, better choices just naturally become the flow, and you become, more in tune and aligned with your higher self, or your super ego. So ego is not this bad terminology to be using, and we really need to stop saying ego to people and shaming them for being egotistical, because you want people to be egotistical. That's them actually being conscious. We're in the consciousness community, yet we're basically telling people to not be conscious when we say, stop being so egotistical. No, being egotistical is observational. So be egotistical. Just stop being itty. Stop vibing at this 3D level. Stop attaching yourself to your ID. Okay? Stop acting on what it says on that piece of plastic in your wallet, and be who you are from your soul, from your higher self. Now, to get into the Carl Jung, that's like this. I told you that he kind of has a different sequential order. So instead of it just being the center and then, the ID, and then on this side you have the superego, it would be more like straightforward. So basically your light body is you at a universal level. It's just who you are naturally. It's the term ignorance is bliss really is what is jumping out at me. In your light body state, it's just all of the traits that you want to bring to the dinner table. It's all the things you want to talk about. That's your light body self. That's just who you are, naturally. Then you have your shadow self, which is all the traumas, all of the experiences that got you in your feels. Again, that's the skeletons in your closet. That's all the stuff that you keep sweeping under the rug. It's the elephant in the room that it's something you have to deal with through shadow work. Shadow work is consciously going back to those times when you were feeling however that trauma left you feeling, like abandonment or just, you know, not feeling worthy of something or whatever have you. And you need to go back to those times and consciously forgive yourself and the people who made you feel that way. Because they may or may not have known that they are doing that. And if they didn't know that, you have to forgive them because they were innocently ignorant. If they did know, still forgive them because they were going through something too that hopefully they've worked through. And maybe all that you need to do is forgive them in order for them to actually come to you so you can receive them actually asking for forgiveness and receiving an apology. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes we are the block, or the thing that we have not dealt with is the block for us to actually receive. So once we start doing shadow work, that is when we start receiving and manifesting at a much more rapid rate, if you will. And then when you really start to do shadow work, you really do get to know who you actually are. If you just accept it's kind of funny, like where the ID is this darkness, it's kind of also like, in this sense, it's kind of, as I said, ignorance is bliss. It's who you think you are. That's the light body. It's all the good traits. You don't want to deal with the dark, but it's who you think you are. So it is also in a way, in a roundabout way, attached also to the ID as well, because it's not who you actually are. But once you really start to, and you realize this by doing the shadow work, you start realizing like, oh wow, I am these positive traits, but this identity that is attached to it isn't exactly me. You start to realize that. And then the more you do that, the more then you will come to your golden shadow. And the best way that I can break this down is, because I know I'm making shadow work, you know, the term shadow work I think is kind of it scares some people, but some people it doesn't. But the best way that I could give, you know, an analogy of what it's basically like is, you know, because you're dealing with traumas and you're dealing with pain and you're dealing with things that aren't comfortable. So it's like somebody presenting you this box, and it's got this like black like cloud, and it's just surrounded in this shadowy looking thing, and it's got, you know, a bunch of barbed wires, and it's got swords coming out of it. It's not easy to handle, is my point. So you have to handle it with care. You have to unwrap things very delicately and just move in a very slow manner. That's truly how shadow work is. Some people like to try and race through it, and then they find themselves more hurt because they're like, oh my God, they're not getting these results that they wish they were getting. That's not how it works. You can't rush through it. It's literally like a broken bone. You know, you have to take time, you have to set it back, you have to give it the time to heal properly and strengthen. Otherwise it won't be as functional, you feel? So, because the thing is, your shadow can actually work for you and to your benefit. It does have a purpose, you know. It's not this thing like that is completely useless and it's just only there for us to deal with and that's no, it's got its purposes too. Like the pain is there to actually make you grow. You know, it's like fertilizer for your garden, if you will. Like the bullshit is there for you to grow. You get it? But getting back to that, it's like shadow work is not something that you definitely rush through. It's something you definitely need to take your time with. Just like you're you know, peeling little layers of barbed wire off, and you're dealing with whatever is in this package that's making it hard for you to actually open it, you see. And because once you open it, oh my God, you'll see what you just went through. It's like you went through all this hell and you open it up and suddenly there's this golden light that emerges from the most unlikely place that you think it would come from. And it's literally your golden shadow. It is who you actually are on that soul level. It is literally you. It is the super ego. You know, it is the most benevolent form of you. It is your highest version, your greatest self. Like, that is what it is. So basically, oh my goodness gracious, like, you go through all that pain to uncover that, and that's like all the hidden talents. That is you just instantly just manifesting abundance. Like, you have no idea the power that your golden shadow holds, but you can only get there if you go through the darkness, if you deal with that 3D self, if you go through all that bullshit, you know. And it's kind of funny how I'm saying it's who you think you are, because literally your light, the light shadow version of you is literally like your mental projection. It's all the good things you want to think about yourself. It's literally a 4D projection of you. And then it's like the 3D, all the bullshit, all the things that you don't want to, you know, actually talk about. That's what you actually have to go to reach that 5D version of yourself. That's how it goes. And in that, I gotta say this too, in dealing with that shadow self, you're gonna go through something called the dark night of the soul. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, okay? I just want to warn people, because I don't want them like watching this and thinking like, okay, I gotta do the shadow work and everything. Because it's not, it's really like the way of the warrior when you do shadow work. It's very rough, okay? But it's worth it. It's totally worth it. And the dark night of the soul is when you really start to realize you aren't who you think you are. And you kind of go through this very strange time period where you start to question even who you are. But then you will know who you are. That's a fact. That's when you meet your golden shadow. And it happens. And it's like, you know why you were put here on this planet. It wasn't just some, you know, random occurrence, whatever have you. You were put here for a reason. Every single being on this planet has a purpose. We just haven't necessarily uncovered it yet, because we're just running this rat race. And it's time we stop running a rat race and we start spreading these wings, y'all, and start soaring like the eagles we are. But y'all, whew, as you know, I'm gonna say it. Spread these wings. Love and lightning. Peace.